Consumers don't go and search for cars on social media. Okay? There's a caveat to that. I'll get to that in a second.
Have you seen or have you noticed the influence of YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, blogs on how people buy cars? Do people spend more time and then believe what is on YouTube, what is posted on Facebook?
So yes, 22% of consumers at the end of 2018 consulted social media before buying a car. Okay. So now you ask yourself the question, what did they consult social media for? It wasn't for the car brand. Consumers don't go and search for cars on social media. Okay? There's a caveat to that. I'll get to that in a second. What they go and do is they go and search for credibility of the entity or person they're buying from. So that's what the 22% of people are doing. They go to social media and they try and build trust around that car dealer or around that seller. Who is this that I'm buying from? What have other people said about them? That's what they use social media for. The only caveat to that is YouTube. It's the only one. I don't think YouTube can be bucketed in this. I don't even believe in the word social media. I don't think social media, what is it?
It's not social.
It's not social. It's yes, they are platforms.
Yeah.
And they are platforms that people go to behave in certain ways.
Okay.
So YouTube is just another platform, like AutoTrader is a platform, like Facebook is a platform, like Instagram is a platform. They're just platforms. Social media is some word somebody made up somewhere. I think Facebook did. Let's just use social for the moment. YouTube is the outlier. 60% of people that have purchased a car consulted or searched and watched a video on that car before buying the car on YouTube. Now, Google South Africa tells us that. That's not even an international stat, that's a local statistic. 60% of people watched a video on YouTube before taking the actions that lead them to buy a car. So YouTube is the only, and those are review kinds of videos, review type videos, where they're trying to solve their questions or answer their questions around. So that's again part of the anonymity. Is I don't want to go and ask a dealer about this particular thing, but how quick is this car? What is its fuel consumption? They'll go to YouTube to ask that question rather than to the dealership to ask that question. And then the other platforms are used for credibility. So I go there, I want to see who XYZ dealership is. Have they got any bad reviews? Am I going to buy a lemon from them? Are they going to give me good service? So 22% of consumers consult social media before buying, but not for the car, for the dealer itself. So let's talk about for a second what causes the or should I say, what is the reason people want to switch cars? Most of the time it's a life event. It's the intersection between a life event and then another thing that's important. And that is twofold. The one is creative marketing and frequency of marketing. So the intersection between a life event and then marketing, and I used marketing, not advertising, because advertising tries to sell something. Marketing doesn't try to sell something. And that's a
Coca-Cola story.
Exactly. Marketing does not try to sell things. And more people need to realize this, is that you can't put an ad in front of a consumer that's not in the market to buy a car. They're not going to listen. They're not going to listen. Becomes noise. You've got to solve their problem. So let's say somebody's just had a baby or about to have a baby. Life event. Okay. So you put a piece of creative together that solves that person's problem for a baby seat. And you tell them, if you buy an SUV, you don't have to bend over to get into the car. Okay? Yeah. So selling point number one for an SUV. You don't have to sell it, you just say, your back's going to get sore. Okay? And this has built-in ISOFIX hooks or whatever they're called. Okay, so piece of creative. Then the frequency of that creative is going to get in front of the consumer. So the decision to start the car buying journey, I think, is in the intersection of those two things. Is if something's not in your face, you're less likely to do it. So if you've had a significant life event change, but you don't know that there are SUVs that will solve that problem, the life event on its own is not going to make you go and look for an SUV. It has to be that intersection. Okay. So that kind of answers your first question around where do you think consumers begin their journey for the search for a new car? I think it's at that crossroad.
Okay. When something happens and then the
frequency and the advert, or should I say the marketing creative. Yeah.
Because it solves the problem that they have at that time.
100%. So which source do they visit when they start their journey? Yeah. I'll give you the breakdown because I've got a breakdown in our research. But the sources are multiple. Okay. There's no one source. You can't. And that's why I say the world of the internet, transparency and anonymity, has caused this situation where that car buying journey is not linear. There's no start. Most of the time, if it's right at the beginning of the funnel, they will Google something. They will Google a problem, or like, what is the price of an SUV? If that problem is top of their mind. But nobody can claim, not even AutoTrader, that all consumers start at a particular point. It just doesn't happen like that. There are just so many subsets of the way consumers search for cars or go on that car buying journey that it's difficult to draft a linear process. Okay. It's, Google says that there are 26 touch points in the car buying journey. 21 of them are digital, which means 21 of them are more than likely anonymous. So and they bounce around between them.
And the type of information that I think we've touched on, what type of information that they search when they're looking for cars? So it should be price.
So we find that on our marketplace, 33% of customers search make, model, price. So that chunk, about a third of customers search using that particular entry point. Okay. The second biggest way in which consumers search is by body type, which is SUV, sedan, and it's all in this report here. So you'll see, body type searches. 47 million searches by body type, okay. Which is the second most frequent way of searching. Okay. The rest is, or should I say, the most frequent way is make, model, and price. Yeah. So if we go, body type, exactly. So you can see here, the 290 million searches, 47 million were by body type. And then if we added all of them together, there's only top 10 here, but the vast majority are make, model, and variant.
But in the information that they search for, how does it influence their buying decision process? Interesting question. Yeah.
So have a look here. If we look at consideration in this data, so we break this down into 3 phases. The first part is consumer consideration. So consumer consideration is somebody comes onto the marketplace, they do a search, they do a filter. Okay. The second part of this, the journey through to actually going to buy the car, is what we call consumer demand. That's when they actually open up the advert itself. Consumer demand. And then the third part of the journey is actually buying the car. So we bucketed into 3. Once they've gone through this whole bouncing around and you don't know where they start, you don't know what they're reviewing, you don't know what they're searching for, they're searching over the internet, they're watching YouTube videos, they're doing all those things, Then suddenly they come to some sort of conclusion.
Okay.
And that starts off with consumer consideration. They do a make model search.
Yep.
Then they look at actual cars itself. So they'll go from that search list and they'll click on a couple of cars. And then they'll go to the dealership and they'll buy the car. So if we look at consumer consideration, BMW, most searched for car. VW, second most searched for car. Not very far behind, 20 million searches versus 19 million searches, and Mercedes-Benz, 18.6 million searches. If you then flip to demand, so you'll see BMW is on the top of the list still. Mercedes-Benz has suddenly jumped above VW, and VW has got to fourth.
And then it goes back to what you said earlier as well, that depending, because you spoke about 31 people being online,
Yes.
but only 12 million with jobs.
Yes.
So it's aspiration. So people will search for BMW, but then people who can afford BMW out of those 12 million, so the only one that will be really buying.
Potentially,
Yeah,
yes.
potentially, yeah. And then others will just have been there just searching, because if you look at the price of the value of the cars, the premium, so your two top cars are premium cars.
Well, I mean, have a look over here.
Yeah.
In terms of searches, VW is second. Mercedes is third. So now, if you're saying that Mercedes is more premium than VW, but the searches are happening on VW as a second most searched for car, let's delete BMW for a second. Okay, let's assume BMW is not there and VW is on top of the list, and then Mercedes-Benz. Then we go to demand, and Toyota's fourth, yeah, and then we go to demand. BMW. Let's ignore model and use brand. BMW's first. VW's still on the top of the list.
Okay, it's considered to what you have in others. Okay,
yes, and then when we go to actual cars sold, VW is the most sold car. So it could be aspirational, but look at where Hilux has gone to fourth, but Ford Ranger suddenly appeared. Is Ford Ranger better priced than Hilux?
Must be the price.
It may be.
Must be the price.
But BMW 3 Series is down here, and Toyota Fortuna's seventh on the list. Isuzu KB is 10th. It's not even on the list in terms of searches.
And Mercedes is not there.
And Mercedes is not there, exactly. So besides the aspirational element, which I believe is in the data set, the other part that's in the data set is influenceability, even if that's a word, is the ability to influence the consumer's influence along this journey around what they see, frequency, quality of creative, trust in the dealership, trust in the seller, trust in the car brand. So that changes the journey, and what they end up buying is different.
Okay. Interesting.
Yes, there's an aspirational aspect there, but at the end of the day, I think influence plays a massive part in what ends up being bought. Because I know that the Mercedes-Benz A-Class or even C-Class is at a similar price point to a lot of Golfs. And so why would somebody buy a Golf if they want a Mercedes-Benz?
I wish we had more time. So I just have to